Hello, everyone. We're really excited that you've decided to join us today. We think we have a really exciting lineup of speakers, networking opportunities, and some great sponsors to visit while you're here with us today. So first, I would love to start with a really special welcome from someone that is one of my favorites, Tiffany DeFoo, founder and CEO of The Crew and author of Drop the Ball.
Welcome, ladies. I'm Tiffany DeFoo. My life's talent for the benefit of all of us. I don't share with you my own passion and purpose because I think everyone's passion and purpose should be advancing.
So sorry, the sound went out. First technical difficulty of the day. Let me get that.
Women and girls. There are some of us who have really got to focus on safety. Welcome, ladies. I'm Tiffany DeFoo. My life's work is advancing women and girls. That's pretty much why I'm on the planet. And I mean that literally. Every job I've ever had, every dollar I've ever donated, every article or book that I've ever written has been focused on answering one question, which is how do we harness women and girls' power and ingenuity and talent for the benefit of all of us? I don't share with you my own passion and purpose because I think everyone's passion and purpose should be advancing women and girls. There are some of us who have really got to focus on saving the environment, who've got to focus on education, this economy, healthcare. I share with you my personal passion and purpose because I believe that women, especially those of us that are juggling competing demands in this hyper-connected world, that life is easier when you know why you're here, when you know why you're on the planet. My purpose is why I'm really excited to be executing it as founder and CEO of The Crew. We match circles of women that collaborate to meet their life goals together. But the biggest reason why I'm thrilled this morning about this passion and purpose is because it's allowed me to be the person to welcome you to the first ever female Firebrand Summit. I am a self-proclaimed female firebrand. I'm sure Mikaela won't mind me sharing that. I think that her book, and I think that this event is so critically important because where women come together to build community, to collaborate with one another, especially fierce women that have ambitions, not just for themselves, but for their community and for the world, I think that amazing things happen. One of my mentors and sponsors was a woman named Marie C. Wilson. And Marie taught me that it's going to get really lonely at the top if you don't send the elevator back down for other women. So as you collaborate together, meet new people, gain new insights, just keep in mind, how can I leverage this information and how can I leverage this opportunity in order to bring more women along? One of the things that my mom taught me is that if you want something you've never had before, you're going to have to do something you've never done before in order to get it. So as you embark on this part of your journey, please take the risk. Think about what you can do that you've never done before in order to advance women, in order to advance girls. And I look forward to what this journey has in store for you. Bye, everybody.
Wow, thank you, Tiffany. I hope you feel as inspired as I do now after hearing Tiffany. I'm really excited to build community today and collaborate with this fierce group of women that have joined us. So I'll leave you with what Tiffany said. Think about this today. How are you planning to take what you learned and bring more women along? And then Would love to also thank our sponsors. As you can see, there was a great group of people that decided to support us today, and this event wouldn't have been possible without that support. All of these sponsors have such high integrity and really focus on making the world better than they found it. So thank you, sponsors, so much for what you do to support us and for supporting this community. And then just a few logistics before our first session. There are lots of different ways to participate today. So we will have the stage, which we're on right now, and there you'll get to see all the main speaker sessions. And then there are breaks between each of those sessions where you can go to the left-hand side and go to networking. That's where you can be matched one-on-one to meet with another attendee today, and kind of get that in-person vibe of getting to network with others. And then if you'd like to connect with that individual while you're in there, click the connect button and you'll get their information to continue the conversation after the event. In the expo, you can learn a lot more about our great sponsors that decided to support us today, and make sure to check them out because there are a few special offers out there. So. And then at the end of all the sessions, we will have the opportunity for people to participate in all of those things that I just mentioned, and then also breakout sessions. So you can go to the sessions button on the left-hand side and get in small groups and share what you learned today and, help create action plans for yourself. And then finally, I think you're already doing it. I would love if you use the chat today to interact with each other. There is that opportunity. You can do it for the whole group, or you can find people and chat directly if you'd like to. So without further ado, our main session, our first one of the day, is our fireside chat with Mikaela Kiner, author of Female Firebrands and CEO and founder of Reverb, and Leslie Feinzaig, CEO and founder of the Female Founders Alliance. Welcome, Leslie and Mikaela.
It worked. Thank you. I'll start chatting while we got Leslie on. There she is. Thank you, everyone. First of all, virtual conference with over 100 people attending. This is new to us and maybe new to all of you. So thank you for bearing with us through some of the technical challenges and excitement. I'm super excited. I love Tiffany. Hope you enjoyed her welcome. Our whole team are big fans. And I said to Tiffany once, I said, Tiffany, we all want to be you when we grow up. And in classic Tiffany fashion, she said, well, that's wonderful, but I think you should all want to be yourselves. And I think that was just so perfect in setting the stage for today. Before Leslie and I jump in, I just wanted to say a few things. First of all, we are doing something. First of all, this is our first ever Female Firebrand Summit. Second, we're doing something today that we haven't done in 7 months, which is that Kylie, Sarah, and I got up. We got dressed for your benefit. We came to our office, which we haven't seen much of, and we even grabbed a cup of coffee. And I say that just because it felt so unusual. It was so energizing, and it was funny the amount of adrenaline of just getting up and doing what used to be really normal for all of us, just get up and go to work. It is not normal times. As we know, times are difficult. And I know that everybody here is facing your own challenges, whether that's caregiving, whether, just managing the stress and anxiety for yourselves, your coworkers, your family members, for women who are caring for children or have your own children. There are additional struggles that everybody's facing. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to be here today. Hopefully this is time to invest in yourself. It's time to learn something new, to build community and network with others, and really to get some support. And today was actually the brainchild of Sarah, who you just heard from. Sarah came to us many months ago now and said, I think people need something energizing. They need something different, right? We're talking about a lot of really hard and challenging and dark things. And what if we did something energizing and inspiring to help ourselves and others get through the remainder of this year and start into next year with resiliency? So that is really the purpose of today. Please take advantage. I know some of you might be watching kids, you might be cooking breakfast, lunch, or dinner, depending where you are. I've heard from more than one person, you may be on a road trip, and that is okay. No bad feelings. We just are so grateful to have you, and please get as much out of today as you can. And with that, I will turn it over to my dear, dear friend, Leslie.
Good morning, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. I'm Leslie Feinzaig. I'm the founder and CEO of the Female Founders Alliance. I have been working with Mikaela for like 3 years, ever since the early days of FFA, when we were nothing more than a Facebook group with big dreams. And Mikaela has been there to support and coach me through accomplishing many of those dreams. And a lot of that would not have been possible without her support. So I'm also one of the Firebrands that is in the book, which is not only incredibly flattering, but also a great holiday present for my parents and my families, because they can read all about me. So thank you, Mikaela, for making me look good in front of my mom and dad. It is my honor this morning to interview Mikaela, and Mikaela is somebody who doesn't allow herself to shine more than others, but really I want to put you on the altar today, and let everybody see a little bit of what I get on a monthly basis with you. So with that, why don't we start with the kind of basic question. Tell us why you wrote the book.
Yeah. So I wanted to be a writer since I was 9. And then a few years passed, and I thought, I should really write a book before I turn 50. And I did reach that goal, by the way. I am not quite 50. I had to wait a long time, actually, to figure out what is it that I should be writing about. And that idea really came to me. I talk about this in the book. I was one of several women who gave a 5-minute lightning talk at an event that was hosted by Ladies in Seattle Tech. And it was about career advice. What was really interesting, though, of course, each of the women who presented had different style, different personality, different background. And when the event ended, I watched as the women from the audience came up, and you could just see them. They gravitated toward whichever of us had resonated with them the most, whichever of us had kind of told their story. And that was the moment for me when I was just like, oh, there's real power in women's stories. And so that was what led me to write about women. And then it was really easy when I thought about interviewing women. People ask me, how did you choose the Firebrands? There are 13 Firebrands. And, as soon as I had the thought, I just started listing names before I even had criteria. And I think I came to 25 names before I was like, oh, I need to stop, because I cannot interview 25 women. And from there, I narrowed it down. And the criteria for the Firebrand sort of came after the choice of the women I would interview, but the criteria really became women who are what I call successful, but that went much beyond the definition of professional success. So yes, they're professionally successful, but that they are also outspoken, that they are advocates for themselves and other women, and also that it should be a diverse group of women. And that was really obvious to me from the event that I mentioned, again, which was the broader array of women who I could talk to, the broader appeal it would have, and the broader the information and the learning would be.
Now, this is in the context that you have a decades-long career in people, right? So with work with Amazon, Microsoft, Redfin, and now I don't know if it's dozens or hundreds of clients, many of whom we know now. So you have had a front row seat on what makes a great leader. Can you tell us, setting gender aside for a moment, what are the characteristics of a great leader?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I was at a coaching conference once where we went through this series of questions. Everyone could do this so easily. Think about a leader you admire, write down the attributes of that person, and then how much of your sort of capacity, loyalty, dedication, and commitment did they get from you, right? And if you think of your best managers, probably like 110% that they got out of you. And to me, those attributes were, they trusted me, they challenged me, they gave me opportunities to take risk, but not without a lifeline, right? So they kind of, pushed me to the edge, but I knew that there was safety there. I think there are also people who care about you as a human being, right? I can think of bosses I had who never knew or asked anything personal, like didn't know about family, didn't care what you did on the weekend, didn't care about interests and hobbies. And that doesn't describe any of the best bosses I had. The best bosses, I think, really get to know and care about you as a human being. They're kind, they're empathetic. They allow for mistakes because we're human. We all make mistakes. At the same time, they have high standards and they push and challenge. And that's why we grow when we're working for these leaders.
And this idea of leadership is something that you can practice at any stage in your career. Can you talk about what does that look like and why is it so important, both when you're an individual contributor, maybe earlier in your career, maybe trying to like rise up the ranks, and also when you're kind of at the top of a team or an org or a company?
Yeah, definitely. I think we're all leaders, or we all have the potential to be leaders. And it's interesting because I talk about leaders at different levels, which means you could be the most junior person in a company or on a team. And leadership looks like great behavior. It looks like demonstrating the values of that organization. And it looks like demonstrating really good basic human values like kindness and honesty and integrity and I kind of hate this cliche, but speaking truth to power, right? Like calling things out and holding others around you to a high standard for their interpersonal behavior. So that's something that anyone can do. I do feel like, the sort of the history of work is a long one, right? And if we kind of think way back, you might think of the assembly line person or, the individual who was just doing tasks or just taking orders. And then the leader at the top who was maybe very autocratic and calling the shots. And that's been completely inverted, right? I mean, in many companies today, it doesn't matter your level or your position. If you have a great idea, people will listen, no matter what your job, your input is valued. I think that describes the best of company cultures. So that's really important no matter what position you're in. Now, the role of the senior leader, the executive or the CEO, of course, is magnified. And I think it's best described in a couple of ways. One is, a few words from a senior leader can send a whole organization spiraling, right? Sometimes a senior leader says, well, I think we should do X. Now, they may think they were just having a passing thought, but you can bet everyone below them is going to be like, we need to go do X, right? And they're going to get running and there might be some unintended consequences. So leaders need to choose their words very, very carefully. I have a coaching client who was a first-time co-founder and executive. And after several months of working together, he had this epiphany and he just looked at me and he goes, I've realized that whenever I talk, it's like I'm speaking through a megaphone, right? And I was like, yes, this is what leaders need to understand. Whether you want to or not, you always are carrying a megaphone. And so you need to be really thoughtful in terms of what you say and how you phrase things. You're on mute.
I am on mute because it's hashtag 2020. And also everybody just got to pick up my husband who was going up the stairs here. I did not move my camera enough.
Hi, Micah.
So let's talk about what that looks like. What, in your experience, do men and women have different styles of leadership? Like, what does that look like? And then I guess what I would ask you next, but you probably don't want to answer it all in one go, is which is more effective?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really interesting, right? Because I have lived in the world of work for 20 plus years. I've had both women and men bosses, some great, others not at all great. So, across both genders, right? It doesn't really fall on any particular lines. And yet last night, as I was preparing for this talk, I started doing research. I was Googling, like, what's the difference between men and women leaders? Like, whose leadership style is more effective? And then I paused and I was like, why am I Googling this? Like, I live in this world, right? I think there's this really hard question that I'm going to dodge, which is sort of nature nurture. A lot of the research and my experience to some degree has shown women and men leaders have different strengths. And you won't be surprised when I say that the strengths of women leaders include things like collaboration, connection, team building, helping people arrive at consensus, helping individuals and groups find compromise. Now, is that because those are things that society, sort of values and enforces more on girls and women versus men? Probably. Is it also something that is innate in our DNA and biology? Maybe, I don't know. But I think there are a lot of truths in that. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't also male leaders who are collaborative and team-oriented. It doesn't also mean that there aren't women leaders who lack some of those interpersonal skills. But when I look across my own experience, I've had more male managers than I have female. Most of us probably have. There are just like more men in leadership roles, especially if you're working in corporate America. I do think there have been differences in style. I do think when I talk to women like the Firebrands, and when I talk to a lot of women founders and CEOs, I do see them, especially founders and CEOs, who have left corporate organizations because some of their inherent traits aren't valued. In fact, sometimes they're devalued, right? Where it could be more political or cutthroat. And they're feeling like, actually, I just want to build a great team and do a great job. I don't want politics. I don't want cutthroat. I don't want the loudest voice to win the room. I don't want arrogance to be confused for confidence. And those are some of the differences that I see.
As you're listing these out, I have this image of the times when leaders play against type. What do you think are some of the consequences when you see women, exhibiting leadership traits that are more commonly associated with men?
Yeah, this is the sad part, right? And this is what we call the double standard. So when a woman is more assertive, more aggressive, more confident, she gets labeled all kinds of words that I'm not going to share here and now. And that's the unfortunate part. And there's research behind this, right? There's research that when women and men leaders behave in the exact same way, they make a very different impression. They get labeled very differently. There was one piece of research specifically where the man was praised as being a driver, the woman was criticized as being pushy, right? And that's the challenge, right? The challenge, I think, is much more so in how we perceive people when they lead than it really is in the gender differences in leadership style.
What does this look like when you're successful at like harnessing your internal leadership, and what does it look like when you are not successful? What are some of your favorite examples?
Yeah, I think success in this is it's really about authenticity. And so again, it's like, first of all, I can only lead in the way that's authentic to me. I mean, at the end of the day, I just can't be anyone else, and neither can you, and neither can your colleague. So when I embrace the way that I lead and the way that I find success, and for me, whether that's through kindness, collaboration, wanting to develop others, wanting to learn from mistakes, I mean, I've worked in places where those were negatives, right? Where I got the like, you're too nice, we're going to talk about this, but you're too nice, you're too quiet, basically, give people too much wiggle room, where in fact I thought, well, that's actually just being human. Because again, nobody's going to be perfect. Nobody who works for me or for you is going to do everything right. And so we have to give that room and embrace the mistakes and failures and learn from them. A huge learning for me that took me, 15 plus years was that I needed to find a place that valued my style. I did that by creating my own place. Leslie, you did that by creating your own place, right? And I think that is why we see a lot of women opting out of corporate, opting out of larger organizations, and going out on their own, where we can form organizations and communities where our style and our values are praised and not criticized, right? And where they're seen for as effective as they are, as opposed to, someone just kind of at a glance sort of saying like, that doesn't appear to be a very effective style to me.
It's the most obvious question. I almost want to ask it. And I also know that there's not a single answer to this, but if we know that collaboration, empathy, authenticity, that people respond to these things positively, why are we still seeing so many few women leaders out there?
See, Leslie, I need Well, I'll back into this one. There's something that's really interesting to me. When we just think about who do we like to be around, who do we like to spend our time with, who gets the most out of us in any relationship, personal or professional, most of us want to be treated with respect. Most of us want to be around people who appreciate us and value us and make us feel good. And then we look at all of these company cultures that are toxic, and people are crying, and people are experiencing so much stress that they have to go on leave. And for women who tend to internalize a lot of our stress, we see really detrimental health outcomes that manifest when we're in these environments. So I start there by thinking, it is beyond logical, like, shouldn't we actually just be nicer to people at work, right? Shouldn't we? I mean, it's really bizarre. Shouldn't we be more supportive at work? And it's possible that this will be my next book, because I think there is this interesting question about why are workplaces so toxic? Why are there multi-million hits if you Google crying at work? Like, there are millions and millions of topic, like, why did we just cry at work? We think that is completely normal somehow, at least in this country. And what if we all refused to work in a toxic environment, right? What if we just said, I'm not going to stand for this anymore? But there's a leadership book that I really like. It's called Multipliers. And it was written by a woman who, starting at age 24, she basically created and led training and development at Oracle. And she did that for 17 years. Her name is Liz Weissman. And then she went out on her own. She wrote a couple of books, and now she has a consultancy. Well, when I said that I went through this exercise where we all wrote about the management attributes that we liked and raised our hands, and then we also wrote the ones we didn't like and basically said those people got nothing out of us because we hated working for them. That was actually in a conversation that was led by Liz Weissman. And you know what Liz did? She took these really obvious things to me, again, like people should be kind, they should trust you, they should challenge and support you as a manager. She quantified those things with research. So again, really interesting that we had to quantify that basically treating people well and like humans is good business. Right, but she got attention because she was able to put numbers and data around it. So that was a really, really long answer to say, why are we still that way? I think people can be slow to change, right? I've seen a lot of great leadership behavior. I've also seen some really, really poor and toxic leadership behavior. That's really frustrates me. Sometimes, or maybe even oftentimes, companies with terrible, mean-spirited leaders succeed. And they'll jump to the conclusion that says, I'm succeeding because I'm, terrible and mean-spirited. They don't think about themselves that way, but that's what it means. I look at those companies and leaders and I think you're succeeding in spite of that. Imagine how much better you could do, how much more retention and engagement you could have, how much more, decisive and efficient you could be if you led differently. The other part, and then I'll stop, but we have examples of leaders who lead in this really harsh and autocratic way. And the problem is that they've successfully led some of the biggest and most incredible businesses of our time. And so when I coach young leaders, they ask me, like, should I emulate so-and-so? You can fill in the blank. But, I had a leader ask me, like, this person has clearly been, incredibly successful, one of the wealthiest men in the world, but yet they treat people in a way that I would never treat people, or, they call people out as being stupid. I would never say those things. So do I try to model myself after them? And I really try to help understand, let's try to model your business success after their business success, but let's not try to model your leadership style after their leadership style, right? Those are two very different things.
Speaking of horrendous cultures, I want to talk about whether that double standard applies in how we judge leaders as well. It's no secret that toxic cultures can come in any gender, and the pressures of building a high growth company can be awful. I've lived them on both sides of it. And yet, in the past 12 months, we have seen very targeted takedowns of a lot of women CEOs for their cultures, when we don't necessarily see, we know that like about 5% of all venture funded companies are led by women, but at least like 3/4 of the takedowns are by women. Now, I also happen to know for a fact that there's a lot of toxic cultures led by men, but they don't seem to get both the media treatment, but also they don't seem to face the same harsh consequences, right? We had so many CEOs that were fired and that had to like have very public reckonings, like the Wing CEO, Outdoor Voices, Refinery 29, like all of these women-founded companies that we kind of put those CEOs on a pedestal only to like slap them back down. So are we seeing a double standard here, or like how do we reconcile all of this? Because I can tell you one thing, like as a rising woman leader, I try to do my best every day, right? Like every single day for my team, but I'm a little scared that one day I'm going to be taken down.
Yeah.
How can you fail like that? How can you, like, how do we reconcile it?
Yeah. It's that set of facts is really sad. And I think you're exactly right. It is a double standard. We do have higher standards for women versus men, and for women leaders versus male leaders. To your point, there have been countless toxic organizations led by men, driven into the ground by men, a lot of information made public, and those men are often, they're retained, or they can just move on and get the next big job somewhere else, and people don't even seem to care about that. There's another study that I thought was really interesting, and in this one, both women and men got up on stage. They spoke and presented. They shared the same information. They presented it in the same way. And the researchers were watching the audience to gauge their reactions. And you have to listen to this. So both women and men responded more favorably to the male speaker. They smiled more, they nodded more, they laughed at the jokes more, both women and men, right? And so what that is showing me is, again, this internalized sexism, that we are all more critical of women, or have the potential to be. We all have the potential to judge women more harshly. And I do think back to when we talked about women's attributes around collaboration and inclusion and team building, the double-edged sword of that is that we then hold women to an even higher standard for those behaviors. And unfortunately, and we heard a lot of this 4 years ago when the Access Hollywood tapes came out, is we love to say boys will be boys. We love to kind of say like, well, the guys, they didn't know any better, the locker room talk. I mean, whichever cliche you want to use. As a society, we love to let men off the hook for bad behavior, and it's unacceptable. And there have been recent cases also where we didn't do that as a society, right? To some extent, Harvey Weinstein, to some extent, Jeffrey Epstein, even though these things came, decades later than they should, at least at some point, they were held accountable, but not nearly as quickly and not nearly as vehemently as the women leaders you mentioned.
Let's talk about feedback, right? So this idea that we are judging women unfairly, I can tell you definitely from my experience. I used to save all of my annual reviews when I worked in corporate, and I would just like read them. And when I was going through it at the time, I remember internalizing all of the feedback that was given me. And then when I was able to step outside of it, I was like, how is it possible that the same person who was too outspoken and aggressive one year was too quiet and shy the next? I was like, how is that? Which one is it, right? And I think I realized that so much of the feedback that I was receiving had nothing to do with me, and it had everything to do with where it was coming from. So talk to me about how we are judging each other and the feedback that women are receiving, and how is that different than men?
I love that you did that exercise, and I would encourage others to do that too if you have, past written feedback that you've received and have that ability to look at it having taken a step back. I actually received a piece of feedback. I don't even know if this was gendered or not, but so I'm in HR. So this was an HR director. He wrote in my performance review, he said, you need to focus more on results and less on activity. Now, to me, that is a huge insult and did not ring true for me. And I was junior in my career, but I think I was so distressed that was in writing that I asked him, I said, I really need to understand what you mean by this. And he looked at me and he said, well, it doesn't really apply to you. I thought it was important. And I put this in everyone's performance review. And I said, could you please take it out? Because it's very unfavorable. And he did. And I'm amazed that I never do that kind of thing. I'm kind of amazed that I even did that, back in my 20s. I was like, I stood up for myself way back. But here, here's what gendered feedback sounds like. So it is the two. You're to this, you're to that. Often we get both. I had a female manager tell me that I was too tactical. And then she told me, and I never understood this feedback, she said, you sound too strategic and people don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, first of all, I didn't know there was a thing of too strategic. I don't know what that means. Second of all, I was too tactical, so I don't know what that means. We're going to talk about some of these twos.
How dare you be too strategic?
I was not. It was not okay, apparently, with her. The other thing about gendered feedback is this, though. It's when women demonstrate the leadership behavior and people don't associate that with our gender. And that's when we get the feedback. You're too aggressive, you're too assertive, you're too pushy, you're too direct. I had a coaching client who I thought handled this really brilliantly. She knew that she was a senior woman. She knew this is the kind of feedback that her all male peers were going to give her. She had great rapport with her boss, who was a man. And so she went to her boss. She explained the concept of gendered feedback to him and then said, I need to let you know, I will definitely receive this feedback from my peers. And please, take it with a grain of salt. Look at it through the lens of being gendered feedback. And I thought that was so brilliant because she educated him and gave him a heads up. And he did reinterpret that feedback, and she was able to get a promotion in that cycle, which I'm guessing would not have happened if she hadn't had that conversation.
I just had a great example that I wanted to share with you as we go into this exercise that we're about to go into. So everybody get your workbooks out because we're just a few minutes away from getting started. I think it was last week that I heard feedback from an occasional angel investor about a woman founder that I know is out there fundraising. And this founder that is out there trying to raise capital is one of the grittiest people I know. Like truly, like hasn't given up. You know, so many obstacles that she's faced, and she doesn't give up. And if anybody here has ever run a sales process or a fundraising process or raising capital, like whatever, you know that you have to be very, I mean, you have to do a lot of outreach, right? Like you have to kind of keep trying and keep emailing and keep hearing back. And a woman investor on the other side of that pitching gave me the feedback that I shouldn't introduce her because she is too aggressive in her follow-up emails. I was like, what does that mean? Well, she emailed me too many times. And I was like, but that's how you raise a capital. Like you have to, like that, I would interpret that as gumption and assertive and all kinds of positive things that are going to ensure that, you know, if you ask for capital timidly and maybe only once, you're never going to raise that. You know, it's already hard enough. And that to me was like such a crystal example of a woman investor giving me very tender feedback about a female founder exhibiting a trait that is generally a net positive when you go out and raise capital, which is you have to be assertive. You have to be on top of it. You cannot be shy about asking for what you need. And if it takes 3 follow-up emails, then that's what it takes. So with that, why don't we, I hope I set up the exercise well. I'm going to hand it over to you to get us going on the interactive exercise.
Perfect. So Kylie is going to help me with the logistics because I've never done this exercise using this tool, but we have done this exercise with many groups of people, and it's just been incredibly fun and enlightening each time. So this exercise is based on the work of a woman named Jenna Boer, and she wrote about this intangible feedback that women receive. And so we're going to do 2 steps here. The first step is we're going to ask you to think about and then write down, I think on the screen or maybe in chat, Kylie will help me. What is your 2? So what is that thing, that feedback that you've gotten? You may have 1, you may have 50, I don't know. Too nice, too quiet, too whatever, fill in the blank. So we'll have you jot those down. If you see 1 or more that resonate with you that someone else has written down, you just put a check mark next to it. We're going to take a couple of minutes to do that, and then we're going to lead into a second part of the exercise that's going to allow us to reframe our 2 as a strength. So Kylie, I'm gonna let you help me out with logistics here. Oh, we're gonna use the chat. So I guess everyone just start throwing into chat, what is your 2?
We're going to go quiet for 2 minutes. I'm putting my 2-minute stopwatch here. And we're just going to go quiet and let everybody think about what are the things that are said about you that you are too something. What is it?
Yep, so 2, fill in the blank, go. While you're doing it, I'm going to figure out how to see chat because I have a different view over here.
I think I should be able to read out the questions for you.
Oh, you can see it? Mm-hmm. Oh, perfect.
I am 2 on top of things.
Yes, you are, Leslie. Just back off.
I'm not. We have 1 more minute, everybody.
Oh, I found it. Okay. Oh my gosh, they're pouring in. Okay, I love this. Thanks for timekeeping, Leslie.
Okay, that's time.
All right, so I found the chat. Thank you all for your patience. This is amazing. I'm not going to read them all, but I will scroll through and read off a handful of these. Thank you, everyone, for chiming in. Too bossy, too loud, too emotional, too focused on details. Again, too bossy, again, too loud, too nice, too emotional. By the way, if you want the epitome of gendered feedback, too emotional for women, which is like any emotion whatsoever. Too aggressive, too blunt, too ambitious, too direct, too blunt, too nice, too aggressive, too direct. Are you getting the feel for it? Too nice, too loud, too blunt, too nice, too nice. Yeah. Too sensitive. Yeah. Too convicted. Standards are too high, too sensitive, intimidating, too stubborn, too dedicated to work, too intense, too big. Mm-hmm. Yeah, too blunt, too timid, too direct. You care too much. Mine is too quiet. So you want to know what gendered feedback sounds like? This is what gendered feedback sounds like. Now you know. So it's either too much of something that is sort of inherently a female trait, or definitely too much of something that is not inherently a female trait, right? The confident, the bold, the loud, the aggressive. In the research that was done by Jenna Boer, the very similar examples, others that I liked included too big, too much, too quirky, too sexy, and too redhead. So yeah, the list goes on. Well, part two is really the fun and energizing part for me, which is now think about your two and reframe it as a strength. So mine, too quiet, which I've gotten all my life, I reframed that as reflective, right? So making that a strength in my style and the way I work. So again, we're just going to take 2 minutes, throw yours in the chat. Leslie also pointed you to your workbook. So if you're keeping up with the workbook, there is a place to capture these. You can capture yours and others, both your two, and then how you reframe it as a strength.
All right. Stopwatch started, everybody.
All right.
I'm immediately having trouble with one of mine, so I'm excited to see how others get it around.
Nice.
One more minute.
I love these. I'm like getting chills reading them.
I know, this is really amazing.
You go, Tisha. I see yours there.
That sounds fun to me. Okay, that's 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Awesome. Boy, take a minute to read and internalize these. You know, and I just feel like this answers our question. When we are, what are the unique strengths that women bring to work and bring to leadership? I think it's everything that you're saying here. So I'll grab a few. Too direct is realistic. Yes, women are so often the voice of reason, the practical ones. We say it like it is. We don't exaggerate as much sometimes. Collaborative, blunt to clear communicator, bossy to leader, absolutely. Too ambitious is focused and driven. The ability to show emotions and be vulnerable. Standards too high means we're driven and looking for impact. Caring too much is dedication and empathy. Confident, capable. Pushy and bossy is decisive, yes. Intense is focused, yes. These are just great. Intense is passionate, yeah. And whoever was told they're too passionate, don't know what that one means either. These are incredible. So take a moment, jot some of these down, whether it's yours or others that you see here. And the extra credit or the stretch assignment is this. It is getting ready to frame this up, and when someone says too direct, that you get to reframe in the moment and say, no, right? I'm just communicating. Too passionate, no, passion's a great thing, right? So that's the extra credit, is take some time to practice and internalize. And I think of this as having it in your back pocket. When you hear the gendered feedback, you want to be ready to reframe that for yourself. And that is one thing that's going to help you have more confidence in the moment. So you all are amazing. I love these. I feel like I just want to actually create a whole book just of these reframings. Maybe we'll do it one day. But I think that's it. Leslie, as we wrap up and transition, did we have anything else?
Well, there's a second part to the exercise, but we are kind of towards the end of the hour. So maybe we leave it as homework, the part where you name the women leaders that you admire and the qualities that you admire about them. Do you want to do it, or do you want to stick to the timing?
Yeah, I would, think about them for sure. I would say leave that for the workbook. But this is going to help, right? When we think about, and there's so many great women in the public eye today. Of course, I'm thinking about AOC because she's everywhere, right? Kamala Harris, who's everywhere and just showing up with so much strength. The purpose of this is that there are great women leaders out there around you. They could be public figures, they could be private figures, it could be your friend, boss, or mentor. But list those women in the workbook for yourselves sometime after today, and then listing their attributes and looking for which of those attributes do you also possess. This is tapping into your inner mentor. So we're really good at our inner critic. Right? We all know the bad voices and things we say to ourselves that are negative. I learned this concept from Tara Moore, who wrote a book called Playing Big, which is that you've also got that inner mentor to rely on. And so I want to help you tap into and remember your own strengths. All right. Thank you. We are transitioning. I need help with the transition. Will someone transition for me?
I wrote my little, I am prepared.
Awesome.
Everybody, this has been such a joy, Mikaela, to pick on your brain, not just for my own purposes, but to get your expertise for an hour. When we talked about this, I did not realize just how powerful doing this exercise all together would be. I don't know about you guys, but I feel incredibly seen by what you have shared about yourselves, because so many of the things that are in the comments are things that I have experienced and judged about myself, and honestly judged about others. So I think that, like, just as much as we want to switch feedback around for ourselves, let's give other women our grace and turn it around for them as well. With that, we are going to take a 15-minute break, and I know you're all probably going to go into email, but hot tip, I highly encourage everybody to walk out the door and get some fresh air, go take a bio break, or play your favorite song and dance it out in the living room, because too many hours on Zoom, I don't know about you, but they exhaust me. So with that, I will hand it over. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you, Leslie.